Welcome to tonight's Artificial Intelligence panel. The event is put on by the Haas Alumni Network here in San Diego in partnership with our friends at the Rady School of Management and then the law firm Sheppard Mullin. My name is Darren Ranke. I'm a Haas alum. I'm also on the board of the Haas Alumni Network here in San Diego. I'll do some quick introductions so that we can direct all of our questions. So first off is Dr. Sam Shahapurkar, who is the Director of Machine Learning and AI Products at FICO. Next over here we have Kevin Harris, who's the CEO of CureMetrics. He leads a team focused on early and accurate detection of breast cancer. Next, in the middle, we have Naveed Alipur, who's the co-founder and managing partner of Analytics Venture, a venture formation fund focused on starting new ventures with AI and machine learning at their core. We have Enrico Ross, who is the AI and machine learning product manager at Qualcomm. He's responsible for shaping and shipping multiple software products that enable on-device interference. And on the end, we have Sandy Agnos, who's the director of product management at BrainCorp, a San Diego-based AI and robotics company. All right, so let's jump right into the questions. So, also, can you guys just answer in about 1 to 2 minutes if possible? I know you guys have a lot to talk about, but I'll make sure we get a lot of questions, a lot of topics covered. So Sam, can you start off by just level setting a bit in terms of distinguishing AI, machine learning, neural networks, and deep learning? There's a lot of misinterpretations. I think people use a lot of these terms synonymously.
Yeah, that's a 3-hour lecture. but let me try to do it in 2 minutes. So the very simple way to think about AI is, and the definition has changed over time, but and a piece of AI is something that senses its environments, then makes an autonomous decision, and then somehow implements that decision, right? So let's say if you have an indoor robot, and I'm going to use your example, feel free to correct me. It senses its environment. It can do that in various ways: vision, LiDAR, sound, all the things that we do while driving the car, right? Think about that. And then it figures out, okay, it has a task to complete, where should I go and what should I do? And then it goes and does it. And the actuation is the wheels, the motors that actually implement that particular action, or the vacuum motor, and so on. So that's a complete full AI system, right? Now machine learning is the central part. So if you think about 3 parts: sensing the environment, making the decision, and implementing the decision. The making the decision part and techniques that are used there are called machine learning. And the machine there is not a mechanical machine. The machine is a computing machine. It's a legacy term that comes from Alan Turing's time. So it's the machine learning from previous data, right? So machine learning is nothing but the computer learning patterns from previous data and using that to make decisions. It's like a teenager learning to drive on the road, right? So initially you can give a lot of theoretical knowledge, but when they're on the road and they practice, they have certain bumps and certain crashes that you have to go through in order to figure out how to actually drive, right? So this is where we train the machine to learn. Neural network is one of the methods of machine learning. Just like you could learn to drive by going to a driving school from your cousin, from your dad or mom, there's different techniques that are used in machine learning, and neural networks is one of them. So in neural networks, what happens is you kind of get almost economies of scale because each unit is a learning unit. So imagine if I was person A, I could learn so much. Person B, I could learn so much. Now let's say all of us learned, and then we were somehow able to exchange our knowledge and build on each other. That's kind of how neural networks work. And the neural network, the networks that you're forming, is nothing but the individual computing components that go into the neural network. And what was the last one? Deep learning.
Deep learning.
Oh, deep learning is you just scale it. Now you found the network in this room, and then you go on a social network and scale it really high, right? LinkedIn. That would be a good analogy for a deep learning, where you just take the basic neural network structure and you use some mechanism to scale and amplify its effect.
Perfect. 3-hour lecture for the price of a minute.
You're getting the worth for your money.
Yeah, great. So another broad question I wanted to ask Naveed, just to level set a bit. So obviously AI has been an increasingly prominent topic in the media, but also in business, and it's surprised me just how pervasive it is, from large companies to small, from life sciences to tech to manufacturing. Naveed, AI has become more sustainable in recent years. What's changed to make that possible?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, the term artificial intelligence has been around since I think 1957, and it's had these bursts and stops and over the years. The reason that it's been sustainable, called these last few years, I put it in three reasons. One, computing power has gone up, so you have more powerful computers, you can do more. Two, storage costs have gone down, right, with the cloud, so now you don't need to have all your own computers to crunch the data. And three, there's more data, right? We all carry around our iPhones, there's IoT devices, you drive a Tesla, it's a IoT device, right? So as there's more sensors, there's more data, costs less to store it, and computing power has gone up, so you can now apply the machine learning to bring that value from prediction, recommendation, detection.
Okay, great. And feel free to jump in if you guys want to add your 2 cents or 10 cents. Now I'd love just to give a little bit of an overview of what each of these folks are doing with their firms from an artificial intelligence perspective. So Kevin, I'll start with you. How is Curemetrics using AI to help combat breast cancer?
So the space that we dug into in breast cancer is a really challenged space for a variety of reasons. When you go in for a screening mammogram, and I see mostly men in the room with very few exceptions, when you go in for a screening mammogram, it's a very complex process. The breast is placed between 2 plates, and you take a top view and a side view. And the images that come out can vary wildly from patient to patient, from patient to self, from left to right. And in the breast, there's no roadmap whatsoever. I mean, if I took a chest x-ray of you and a chest x-ray of me, they're going to look relatively the same. We have ribs in the same place, heart, lungs in the same place. But when you deal with the breast, it's a very, very different thing. And how that manifests into the medical practice is doctors don't do a very good job at screening mammography. So they only find about 80% of the breast cancers at point of screening, and that's the industry average. So great doctors will find 88 or 90%, but 80% of all the doctors in the medical practice who are radiologists are general radiologists. So most mammograms are read by general radiologists. So detection rates in market are really low. Couple that with the fact that we're a very litigious society. So doctors always err on the side of caution. For every 1,000 women that are screened for breast cancer, doctors recall 100 patients where they think there's something suspicious, and they only find 5 breast cancers. So there's a 95% false positive rate in recalls, and 80% false positive rate on biopsies. So every time a patient goes in for a biopsy, between 79 and 80% of those will be false. And all of these false recalls and false biopsies cost the U.S. healthcare market about $4 billion a year just in mammography. The challenge is, it was put really interesting to us by one of our doctors. He said, if it's Tuesday and it's 2 o'clock and I had a cheeseburger for lunch, my eyes are tired. And if I'm looking at 100 mammograms and yours happens to be number 87, and you're the one with cancer, and I'm on number 86, and somebody taps my shoulder, and I turn around and come back, and I've lost my attention, it's just a very challenging process. So with us, we've developed a tool that can read that mammogram. The eyes don't get tired. We've looked at 500,000 images, so we understand what it looks like. We understand things about the image that the doctor can't even see with their own eyes. Doctors can use magnifying glasses and zoom in on the image, but they still don't really understand what they're seeing. And the machine can actually learn features and characteristics of masses and calcifications that the doctor can't even begin to understand. So when somebody's got some music playing. When you put that all together, it becomes a very, very powerful tool. So as I said earlier, where the doctors are able to find about 80% of the cancers on screening, we can find about 98%. Where the doctors are getting it wrong 70 to 80% of the time on biopsies, we can eliminate about 80% of those unnecessary biopsies. And where doctors right now have to read all those 1,000 cancer screeners to find the 5 cancers, we can pre-read those 1,000 screeners and tell the doctor, hey, you should probably look at these, and the rest are likely normal. So it becomes a very powerful tool for creating workflow optimization, improving efficiency, improving efficacy, saving lives, saving money, and that's why we got into it.
Very different type of business. So Sandy, can you talk to us about how BrainCorp is bringing AI to machines with wheels?
Sure. We're more in the robotics space, and what we're doing is, instead of building a ground-up solution, our core platform product, BrainOS, is our autonomous navigation software, along with our sensor kit and our computer board. We're enabling companies to take existing manual machines and turn them into robotics. So we hope to be in many different verticals. This first space we entered was floor care. So we're working with scrubbers and vacuum manufacturers, taking their existing machines and turning them into robots.
And Enrico is in product management at Qualcomm. So can you talk to us first of all, define what on-device AI is? I'm not sure if many people have heard of that term, and also how Qualcomm is using it.
Sure. So on-device, we call on-device. There are many devices, there are robots, and for us, a device is actually a smartphone or an IoT device. So some of you are holding it on their hands, or they're using it right now. Some of you are recording pictures. Some of you have it in the pocket or in the purse. But basically, everybody has one or more phones. And the thing is, if we can make that intelligent, if we can put learning, machine learning, neural networks execution, if we can put intelligence inside, what can that device do? So that is for us on-device machine learning, because for now, all the AI is happening on the cloud or on the robots around you.
We're in the cloud.
In the cloud as well, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, if you can have enough computational power in your pocket, what can it do for you? So that is what we are working on right now. We're trying to deploy on the market a massive amount of computational power so that your device can become intelligent. And there are many benefits to it. So, for example, you don't have the latency of going to the cloud and coming back. So if you're recording a video and you need to apply special effects and stuff, you don't go to the cloud and come back. Your data remains on the device, so it's private and secure, and you don't have to pay all the cloud costs because you have the computational power in your device. And just to give you an idea, if you buy a phone this year, you're going to have the same power than the supercomputing center bought in 2003 for their supercomputer that year. So as far as AI, which is like a lot of matrix multiplications and stuff, so we're trying to deploy the massive amount of intelligence on the market to see what then developers can come up with, and what the ecosystem will come up with. It's not only Qualcomm, but everybody's trying to deploy those massive multiplication engines inside the phone.
Yeah, just to give a sense of reach and scale, so how many mobile devices are shipped? I forget if it's 2018 or 2020.
Well, Qualcomm has close to 1 billion per year. By 2021, I think we're going to have 6 billion devices that qualify as AI-capable devices.
Per year, right?
No, like cumulative. We're talking about high-tier devices that have a lot of power on board. Because part of our job is to define how much power did we deploy to the market and how much power we put into an $800 phone and into a $600, $250 phone. So right now that power is very expensive, so we need to decide. Like the analogy that we usually use is, can we take a little piece of a brain and put it inside of the device, and at that point, what is it going to do? And for that, we have a roadmap of use cases that we try to, kind of everybody in the industry is aiming to. Everybody's making their bets on where we're going to go, and everybody's just rushing to implement it before everybody else.
From Brain Corporation, our challenge is we're trying to find that CPU, that computational power in as small a package as possible. We use the cloud to help us with software operations, download software updates, pull data, troubleshoot remotely. But our core power and how we operate the robot is actually on the machine. And right now we're in floor care scrubbers, but we want to get into consumer robots and other robots that are going to have a much smaller footprint. So we're looking for big power and small packages.
And we're here to help you.
Yeah, I know, that's tough.
Yeah.
Business partnerships in action, although they're already working.
Right.
Perfect. But basically, yeah, those large servers, it's like in the beginning of the personal computing, machines were so large they fit in rooms, and then they fit into your personal computer, and now you have all that power in the phone. The same thing, AI right now is in large servers, and now it's on graphics card that you can buy on your computer. Very soon, same amount of power, you're going to have it inside your phone.
Great, thank you. And then Sam, talk to us about FICO a bit. So FICO is a lot of interesting details that I learned about. I didn't realize it started as a missile. It's somehow involved in missiles and defense back in the 50s or 60s. But so Sam, talk to us about how FICO is using AI and machine learning to combat issues like money laundering and human trafficking.
Yeah, so that's quite a jump from missiles to your FICO score that you're saying, okay, why is it not 800? Why is it 600? To actually money laundering. So FICO score is actually just about between a quarter and a third of FICO's business. The other third is really fraud detection. So whenever you swipe your card, let's say Citibank, Wells Fargo, or your favorite credit union calls in and says, did you make this transaction? It's actually FICO software, because we process 90% of the transaction and we give out the result to the bank saying, is this fraud or not fraud? And that has to happen within 20 milliseconds. So 20 milliseconds is 20 thousandths of a second. And so that requires a lot of machine learning. And here is the thing though, but we have been at it since the early 90s. So imagine, he said the 2003 supercomputer now fits in your pocket. Imagine doing that with 1990 computing. So some of those techniques and algorithms are really powerful. They are old. They do not include anything like deep learning, because deep learning is heavy computation. And this really uses efficient computation and makes those kinds of decisions. Now, to the money learning, so those same techniques can then now be applied to, so fraud, of course, detection is good for the society and for your wallet and banks and all that, but what about money laundering? So one of the statistics about money laundering is everything that's bad in this world works on money, and that money has to be transferred through the regular financial system for them to do anything with it. Otherwise, it's useless. It's a pile of useless stuff, right? And governments and law enforcement people really struggle. So they barely catch 1% of the money that's laundered in the world. And based on that 1% that they catch, they estimate that it's annually around $1.6 trillion. So imagine if you are able to catch that much, and that this 1.6 trillion, by the way, is just US and associated economies. So it's a huge problem. And it's a very difficult problem to solve, because it's hard to detect what's a genuine transactions versus what's a money laundered transaction. And we are using those same techniques now to solve that. And it involves a lot of unsupervised learning. So unsupervised learning is learning where your example data is not labeled. So you don't know whether something is, has been previously classified, let's say, as breast cancer or not. Just based on the data, you got to figure it out. So that's some of the things that we are doing in that space.
Great, thank you. The next theme I wanted to move on to, and I think a lot of people are interested based on the show of hands, is really how AI can be applied either to launch new businesses or at existing companies. So Naveed, can you start us off with, talk to us about some of the business models that have either been created or are now viable given the rise of AI?
Sure. Well, I think, to take it back, you say, every industry has data, whether it's real estate or agriculture or financial or healthcare. And there are, these diamonds in the rough, or needles in the haystack, that a human brain cannot by itself detect. And that's where AI and machine learning comes in to help make a prediction or make a recommendation or detect the breast cancer that the human brain, the human eye cannot process. So anywhere that you could do this, you're going to bring efficiencies. You're going to save money, and you save. If you can show a cost saving, then you have a model there to charge on a SaaS-based model. If it's on to help them make money, well, again, that's something where people will pay for that. So what we're looking at is, because we're vertical agnostic, is, where is the data? Ideally, we want clean, structured data because bad data in, bad data out, and so who has the data in their vertical? And there's a saying now that data is a 21st century's oil. Well, you could be the Saudi Arabia of oil. It's useless if you can't get it out of the ground, refine it, and turn it into gas. So it's the AI and machine learning that is the refinery that is processing that data. So for us, we like to say that our artificial intelligence lab it's the refinery, right? But it's useless. It's going to rust if we don't have partners that have the data, that are the domain experts. So in the Curometrics example, which is one of our portfolio companies, we're not healthcare experts, let alone breast cancer experts. And now 4.5 years later from when we started the company, it's recognized as the top company in the CAD space, the computer assisted detection space, with breast cancer, as Kevin said, being the hardest to detect. So we brought in the right people, the experts, the mammography, the radiologists, and they, in working with the data scientists, will say, this is what I need to identify. So that's where, with existing businesses, it's one thing to have the data. It's then another to find the right experts that know what to do with it. And the statistic I just heard this morning, so it's fresh in my head, is I think there's something like 10,000 data scientists globally, right? So it's a very small number, and every industry needs to apply AI to their data to make predictions, recommendations, detection, which you do that, you're going to make money or save money.
Great. Yeah, great practical examples. Kevin, can you elaborate on that? I know some of the things we talked about is how companies can make AI not just a toy, but actually a tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we do live in the healthcare space, and as an adjunct to the healthcare space, you have the academic space. And one of the things that we see a lot of is there's a lot of people out there, what I refer to as 3 guys and a dog at University of Somewhere, who are in some form or fashion playing with AI. And there's a lot of people whose sole goal is to demonstrate that something works. And showing that something works is great if you're going to write a paper, but it's not great if you're going to sell a product. What you actually have to be able to do is to create something that has, in our case, clinical utility, but in all cases, market utility. So you have to be able to understand where the pain points are in whatever industry you're chasing. So for us, for example, when you detect breast cancer in the early stages, it can cost $10,000 to treat. When you detect it in the late stages, it can cost $180,000 to treat. So the earlier you can find breast cancer, the less it costs to treat. And when you deal with socialized governments, so we're dealing with countries all around the world now that pay for the screening and the treatment of breast cancer, the earlier we can find it, the happier they become in terms of how much it costs them to treat, and the better they're serving their citizens because these people are actually surviving. Now, there's a flip side to that story, one that most people don't want to hear. If you go into a fee-for-service hospital, which are still prevalent here in the United States, every breast cancer you miss is lost revenue, because the average weighted cost to treat breast cancer is $104,000. So if doctors are only finding 80% on screening, that means 20% of opportunity is walking out the door. So when you're creating a tool and you're deploying artificial intelligence, the trick is to really understand where it has its utility and build something that is not just a proof of concept to write a paper, but something that actually has the utility and applies to a specific use case in the market.
Here. I could kiss this guy right now. Because he nailed it. He really nailed it. And that is where one needs to start. Start with the problem. Start with the pain point. And it's irrespective of what technology, but especially true for artificial intelligence, right? And artificial intelligence, introducing that in any organization is going to be painful. I compare it to an organ transplant. So let's say your kidney has to be replaced. First, you need to find the donor, and a lot goes, if you have watched any of Grey's Anatomy or any of those episodes, a lot goes into finding the donor and getting the kidney to your, at the right place at the right time, right? After that, it's just chop, 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 stitch to stitch, gone, right? That's exactly how AI is. It's the finding the problem, who is going to whose pain point is it? Once that AI is in place, who is it going to replace? How much resistance are you going to get from that? What are the regulation implications, the financial implications? That's the important part, and that's why I'm here today, because this is the audience that's going to help with that, right? Because the data scientists, even though there are very few of them, they are lost in their algorithms mostly, right? And they are proving that it works, right? I saw the other day, a video is going around social networks where someone made 2 robot arms assemble an IKEA chair, and that was the demonstration of the AI. Now I'm like, what problem does that solve? Right? Because IKEA was created for a different purpose. But anyway, so I don't want to take too much time. But you get the point that that is where I think guidance is needed, right? Because the AI is raw power, really powerful. But if we are not sensible in what we are going to apply it to, it is going to be overhyped. Hype leads to a bubble, bubble leads to a bust, and with the bust goes investment, and we are going to miss this opportunity. So it's upon the business guys to really think hard where the problems are, and then guide the data scientists to fix those problems.
Great, you answered my next question. Enrico, so can you talk to us about some of the new use cases for on-device AI?
Sure. Yeah, there are many. There are so many. And they're also fascinating. So, for example, imagine that you're getting a call from an unknown number, right? You're like, oh, I don't want to answer this call right now. Like, what should I do? Why is the phone not answering for you in your voice? Taking the call, then if it's a friend, they can pass you the call. If it's not a friend, you can just keep on talking for them for hours and hours. Just so you consume their money, it becomes expensive for them. Because a lot of the calls you get are robot calls anyway. So it's AI is calling you. Why don't you use your AI? Just fight back.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a use case. But basically, when you start to look at even from a business perspective at where you can apply AI, when you start to get into that loop, each and every application, each and every task is kind of becomes automatable. So for example, in the phone, what are the use cases for on the phone? You can, okay, so I want the camera. Actually, the camera. If you took a selfie in that portrait mode that the iPhone has right now, or that Google has, that is AI. It's a segmentation network which is performing like a background separation, they're blurring. So you're using AI and neural nets, even if you don't know it. But if you wanted to have the phone to select the best picture for Instagram, the one that's gonna get you the most likes, very easy to train model. You can do it in a second, and out of 40 pictures of a party, you can just pick the best one, post it on Instagram, and that's it. So you don't need to worry about that. But there are plenty of cases. Games, you're playing a game, you cannot get over a level. Why is your phone isn't it playing for you to get you over that hurdle, right?
Isn't that cheating?
It is cheating, but on the other hand, they're asking for that 20 cents for having the little hammer to crush the candy, and you don't want to pay that. I paid $800 for a phone, so play this game for me, and I want to beat my friends. I don't, sometimes it's, you just press that button, it just goes, but if you take each and every app on the phone, it's going to be replaced by an AI-aware app. So if you're making an app today, or if you're making a business today, there's one that comes with AI. I'm sorry, but his product is probably putting some part of an industry out of business because he's doing it better. Mm-hmm. And AI apps are going to do a better job than the other apps. And truly, just look at any app and you'll figure out how to make it better.
So I have two quick comments to make on that. In regards to what Curemetrics is doing or others, there's this fear of, AI is going to destroy jobs, and what are we going to do? Well, we're not even there yet. There are jobs that sure will inevitably disappear, but there are jobs that will be created that we can't even foresee. Just like, Facebook, Google, Amazon didn't exist 20 years ago. Look at all the jobs they've created. And right now, to stick with radiology, we have radiologists in the U.S. In Mexico, they have under 200 radiologists with a mammography expertise. So it's a huge problem that they don't have enough of these doctors. So the AI is empowering the existing doctors to do their job better and to be able to see more people. In in that regard. To your comment about AI on every app, I think right now, we keep hearing this term over and over again. I think in a few years, you're not going to hear the term artificial intelligence. It'll just be assumed. Just like in the late 90s, companies said, we're an internet company. Well, of course you're an internet company, right? They stopped saying that. And so I think the same thing will happen at some point where it's just going to be assumed that there is an AI application in everything.
Well, and I'd like to add on to your first half of the comment of, your business case and what you're trying to solve. And for us, with our first vertical in robotics with BrainOS, we're really a collaborative robot. You haven't removed a person from the process. We still need someone on the front end and someone on the back end. We talk about working in parallel. And what was interesting for us is the market drivers, everybody is trying to reduce costs and find ways to increase profit. But one of our interesting drivers that we discovered after we entered the market was the cost associated with absenteeism. So our products today work in third shift. Those are very difficult positions to fill. Nobody wants those jobs. Nobody stays in those jobs. The average tenure for a third shift employee is about 3 months. So a lot of companies have a hard time meeting their scope of work. And if we can automate one of their tasks in the custodial industry, then companies are better able to meet their scope of work and do it with fewer people. But we're not necessarily removing a person from the equation, because you still need someone to fill the scrubber, drive it to the starting point, select what route it's going to clean, and then at the end of the shift, you have to take the machine back to the closet, dump it, and charge it for the evening. So we're really truly more of a collaborative robot.
Yeah, I think those are great examples of how it's not necessarily going to wipe out entire industries and roles, but actually how it's complementary and empowering oncologists and the co-bot or the collaborative relationship. So switching gears a little bit, I'd ask any one of you who wants to respond, but what can each of us do to future-proof our careers and companies from the inevitable continued growth of AI? And who wants to take that one?
I'll start with some practical advice. So if you, just like a couple of guidelines, if you're starting today a business, just make a startup on the AI field and then sell it very quickly or get investment very quickly, because right now it's selling very much. If you're working for a large company, take a product with some AI sticker to it of some sort, and as well as going to serve you well. But no, in reality is you need AI right now in all its incarnations is a tool that you need to have in your toolbox. True, first thing I did as soon as I got into the AI, and by the way, to make my transition to AI, I only had to ask for 4 months, I think, inside Qualcomm. Can I go into AI? Can I go there? And after 4 months of asking, I got a yes. As soon as I made the transition, I needed to go to Coursera, and there are many people that are nodding right now because they know what I'm talking about. You don't know AI, you go to Coursera, you take that very famous class by Andrew Yang, and you're going to learn at least some of the terminology. Actually, you're going to become a real expert if you take that class compared to the average person. So it's something that you should start worrying about that right now, because it can lead to a lot of value for you in the future.
Well, I think AI is, in many cases, data, and what can you do with data, and who owns the data, and how can it help you improve your business decisions? How can it help you automate some of your processes? And in robotics, how can the larger data footprint we get, the more computational power we have, and the better path planning and maneuverability our robot has in terms of our algorithms and how we build out our algorithms. And then on the flip side, taking the data that we collect from the devices that are being used today, and how will it help our end users and our customers? Can we get into predictive maintenance? Can we help our customers determine when they're ready to change out a vacuum motor, when they need to switch out a squeegee on a floor care scrubber? How can we help them make better decisions before it becomes more expensive than it should be?
So, if I may add, so a show of hands, how many of you consider yourselves computer literates? And look around yourselves too. Computer literates. That means you can read and write computers. Can you use computers? How many of you can use computers? Just raise your hand. Okay, almost everyone, right? Now, how many of you can program in C++? Okay, so, less than 1/4, right? So I think, according to what he says, AI is going to be so normal, so ubiquitous that you will not hear people mentioning it. So, which means that just like computers today, in order to use them, you need not know C++. In fact, the very advantage of AI is that you shouldn't need to, right? It should work for you, not the other way around, right? But you need to be aware of what is possible and have a balanced view of what it can do and what it cannot do, right? So what I'm saying is, not everyone needs to get a graduate degree in AI. Not everyone needs to go on Coursera and do all the AI stuff, right? But you need to be aware how it works. However, I think what is key ingredient is that he brought up earlier is there are three key ingredients in building any automation or machine learning / AI system. There is the data, there is the data science part, and then there is the domain expertise part. And the domain expertise part is definitely not going to go away, right? In fact, you could automate the data science part, and the need for data scientists or so many data scientists could subside, but the domain expertise is not going to go away. So if I were you, I would bet on a domain expertise. What do I mean, right? If you're in finance, know your finance very well, know the problems that are there and where AI could be applied, and have enough knowledge that you can then interact with any new AI system or a data scientist to build something new. That's what I would put my bet, not taking Coursera. Because imagine this, you take a few Coursera courses and then you're seeking a job in AI, and out comes another person next to you who has a graduate degree from Department of Computer Science in UCSD, also applying for the same job. Who is going to get the job? Right? That's what happened with computer scientists. So I don't think everyone needs to become an AI expert. Everyone needs to be AI literate, but not necessarily become an AI expert. I would put your bets on the domain. Here is another statistics. There is this whole thing of data scientist shortage. I actually believe that it's not there. It's just a lack of data scientists who also know the domain. That's the trouble. Because according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and these are statisticians, data scientists themselves, collect data and predict what jobs are going to be there in the future. They predict between, by 2026, you would need a sum total in the world of 40,000 data scientists, so from 10,000 to 40,000. So there's only 30 more thousand jobs to go and get. Whereas all the other jobs are not necessarily going to go away. So here's the thing, focus on AI literacy, but figure out what your domain is, where you want to solve the problems, and what are the problems that need to be solved.
I'd like to follow Andrew McAfee from MIT. He wrote The Second Machine Age. If you're looking for a really good book, I would recommend. He has a blog as well. I've been able to see him speak, but what he talked about is where automation and technology is going to be most disruptive, and a lot of it is in white-collar jobs in finance and in law. So that's really interesting. I think to your point, to understanding the domain is where are you going to be able to disrupt using AI, and where do you want to be, and how can you utilize that?
Go ahead.
Just the thing, not to defend the data scientist part. I think that 40,000 is not enough, but it depends on how you define a data scientist. If it's very narrow, yeah, only 40,000. They're probably going to make $1 million each, but only 40,000. But my opinion, it's all of the value chain that needs to be looked at. So if the value is in the data, start a company that makes data, produces data, label data of high quality, start and sell that. If the value is in the machine learning models, start a company that makes the machine learning models out of data. If it's in robotics and automation, do that. If it's in a vertical, do that. He's looking at one of the hardest challenge, very likely. Do the same for ecography to other parts. The problem is like your future roadmap or stuff. I'm saying like there is so many verticals or horizontals that you can attack right now, and you can literally like from what we see on the market, there is a starvation for. In our case, we see a starvation for like models and like companies that want to launch like new features, and there are never enough people to hire. Every company has a major hiring problem in our space, and they're hiring thousands of people. So probably they're not data scientists. They're more like application people or product people, strategy people. I see that like, for example, a problem that we have is that we cannot have a long-term vision because the short-term demand is so high. So having people that can craft long-term vision on how to apply AI within companies, and they can come with a solution and go to a company and say, hey, I have your AI strategy. I'm just going to sell that to you. Then you become very marketable.
You know, I mean, we're at the infancy of this movement, right? We're nowhere near what Elon Musk likes to talk about, the robots taking over. He just likes to be in the news all the time. And so we're not there. To Sam's point, you still need the domain expert. So you need the AI plus the HI, the human intelligence, right? You still, we have another company that, similar sounding name to CureMetrics, CureMatch. And what they do is if you have cancer, God forbid, you go get that sequenced by companies like Foundation Medicine or Guardant. They send that 31-page PDF to us, and their algorithm will take the information of FDA-approved drugs, and out of 4.5 million combinations, we'll say this is the combo of top 3 drugs for this patient-specific cancer. Well, no oncologist can process 4.5 million combinations, so you're not going to replace oncologists for a long time. And where Watson has failed, where IBM is, they're famous for their sales and marketing and not necessarily their products. And so where they failed is the marketing department got ahead of what Watson could do. Watson tries to say, here's our solution and apply it to every problem. You can't do that. You still need the domain expert, to Sam's point. And so I love that you pointed that out.
Sure, thank you.
With the risk of running down a rabbit hole, I'd like to ask one more question, and I'll turn it over to the group. But what are some ethical and moral considerations of AI? I know we touched on them a little bit, but who wants to take that one?
How much beer do you have? Go ahead.
Kevin, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. I have a very sideways view of this thing because I think it should take over in a whole lot of ways. I think that the power that can be generated with these algorithms, if your job is one that's going to get replaced, then it should get replaced because I think that there may be a higher and better purpose and a higher and better use for you, and you may have been doing something that can be done better. And if it can be done better by a machine, unless we're removing a human interaction that's important in the relationship of that interaction, I think it should be done better by the machine because I think it's better for society. In the healthcare world, it's better for the patient. So I'm all for charging full bore into this thing. But I do think that you have to be cautious. You know, in our world, we build these algorithms, and you can talk about a self-learning algorithm, right? So how do you create a self-learning algorithm in the healthcare space? What if it learns something wrong? What if it's diagnosing at a certain level because of all the patients it's seen, and something gets sideways in the self-learning, and all of a sudden its abilities deteriorate? So there has to be a human oversight, a human master that oversees this. But I do believe that to the extent that you can teach an algorithm to do something better than a person can. I was talking to somebody earlier about making coffee at the Starbucks. I mean, do I have to get the attitude from the barista, or can you just push a couple of buttons and know what I like when I walk in the front door and make the coffee that I want without having that human interaction? The flip side of that is I like talking to the barista. You know, I enjoy that attitude because it's some kind of interaction that I do get. But I think a lot of things in today's world should be replaced, and we should move forward with the technology.
Any other perspectives before I kick it to the audience?
Well, the one comment I wanted to make is, there's a big difference between intelligence and consciousness, right? And so you could have a very intelligent machine learning algorithm that can beat a chess player or the Godot game, if you saw that, because they trained it. It played 1.2 million games. No human is ever going to play 1.2 million games, right? And so that's why I say we're at the infancy of this, and there are certain things it could do, but it could be intelligent, but it doesn't have the consciousness of a 3-year-old kid, right? So that's why I say we're really far from, in my opinion, from, and sure, technology and innovation is on exponential growth, but we're not where you're going to have self-aware Skynets, to the point of the title you came up with for the panel.
Yeah, nature has been at us for quite some time, millions of years, and we are fast, but not that fast. I agree with you. But I think where we need to really pick up speed is this ethics question, and one of the things that, and usually doesn't come up, this question, and we get into this question through, okay, are robots going to take over? But I think that is where the biggest challenge of AI is, not the technology or anything like that, but the ethics of it. Because let's say we take the same genetic 30-page PDF, and all insurance companies, health insurance or life insurance companies are require you to take that test. And then based on that, they set your premium. Would you like it? No, because they could predict with certain, precision that you are going to be vulnerable to heart disease, you are going to be vulnerable to mental diseases. And now let's say, or depression or something like that sort. And let's say they are then allowed to sell that data to the employment data exchange, which now employers subscribe to, right? So who is going to, so today, there are not very many laws that control any of this. All the laws are around privacy. I say privacy is dead, long live ethics. Because there is nothing called privacy now, right? You are connected to the internet, that means you are not private, that's it. But what's the question? How is your data going to be used by who and for whose benefit? That is where regulations need to come in place. And that's where we all need to be aware and literate and cautious of the issues that are happening around us, and influence our lawmakers to move on this. So I think that is the biggest challenge in AI, if you ask me.
Great point. Now I'd like to open it up to the group. So who has a question? Dave in the back.
I have a question about the urgency about AI adoption. I'm listening to this audiobook right now called Master Algorithm, and he makes this analogy, Google versus Yahoo. So Google had a pretty good algorithm, Yahoo had a good algorithm. Google got ahead, and the algorithm started eating up all this data. Everybody was doing search. Yahoo can never catch up because they're learning, and they control the incoming data stream. So what went through my head literally was AI or die, which I hate, right? Because that's Skynet. But the other side of it is, from a business perspective, we need to have a very real sense of urgency. Because if we get our hands on a good algorithm and we get out front and we start funneling the data, say, in my business, because I do something that has an AI-driven value, that none of my competitors can ever catch up, because I'm kind of controlling the funnel of data. My algorithm's going to learn more faster. It's going to push to an accuracy rate and prediction or recommendation or whatever. None of my business competitors can ever catch up. So just thoughts on the urgency of adopting AI in my business. Because there's probably a lot of people that are like, I'm thinking about it, I got an idea, maybe I should do this, maybe I have a strategy, maybe I'm dipping my toe in the water, but I have this question about the urgency around adopting AI in business.
I'll take a stab at that, because for our company, it's essential, and we wanted to get to market as quickly as possible. The bigger footprint we can get, the better our algorithms are going to be, and that will be a competitive advantage. If we have the best, which I think we do, autonomous navigation out there, then we are going to be more appealing no matter what vertical we get into. So we can prove ourselves quicker. We get more data points to improve our algorithms, and it keeps us ahead of the pack.
other responses?
Every time there's a new market that opens, like, AI is a technology enabler, opens an amazing new market with all these verticals and all the things, there's going to be land grabbing. And the first you are there, the more land you can grab. So definitely. There are a lot of companies that say, oh, I wish I figured out my mobile strategy 5 years ago. A lot of CEOs that say that. And now there are CEOs that say, oh, I wish I figured out our AI strategy 2 years ago. Yeah, definitely. If you don't have an AI strategy right now, I'm sorry, but like your competition has it. So.
Okay.
So I have a different spin on this, if you don't mind. So the search for the key algorithm that would put you ahead of your competition, I think is a fool's errand. Because I'll give you an opposite example. MySpace or something was before Facebook, but Facebook really took off.
Friendster.
Yeah, Friendster, and there was Orkut also, right?
Yeah.
They're nowhere now, right? They had the first mover advantage, but what if they fumbled? In fact, Yahoo had the first mover advantage that they were there in search. What Google did is, at least initially, they figured out, okay, people are searching, and what is their problem? Why are they not happy with the current search state? And then they figured out a simple page rank algorithm. The page rank algorithm, by any means, I don't think there is even a computer science journal paper that could be published because it's so simple that no journal would publish it, right? But it solved a problem. I think that is key.
Well, it goes to your business case.
Right.
Are you solving a problem? Which we identified. We had a great market to disrupt, but our urgency was we want to get a bigger data set so we can continue to build features and functions on our autonomous navigation. So, knowing that we had a good business case, knowing what problem we were going to solve, and then keeping relevant. So we, voice of the customer, understanding our market, good old product management, cornerstones, will help us continue to launch into other verticals and continue to build the best products that we can.
We had a question over here, I believe.
I think this relates to the on-device side, on-device kind of systems. With 5G coming along and you have faster upload speeds and all that stuff, do you see the movement right now? You're trying to pack a lot into a device, a standalone device. In this case, it will be a standalone phone or a standalone robot. But do you see the movement, instead of packing everything there in such a small device, where you actually will be doing the core processing more remotely as the speeds of 5G come along? And so that way you're not constrained to the size, right? You can have quantum computing in the offside, right? That's offside. So do you see the movement going there, or do you still see the continuation of packing into small devices, all the AI and the intensity of AI?
Let's give you two perspectives. So I'm going to give you one perspective, and if you don't mind, because we have a 5G product manager over here from Qualcomm, by the way. So my perspective is that you cannot, for some apps, for some use cases, you cannot degrade the feature set if you don't have a connection, for example. So for some intelligence use cases, it's not that, oh no, I'm in the middle of the desert and now I cannot even take a picture because my phone cannot reach the network if I want to apply an effect or things. So there is like feature availability that doesn't need to get impacted if you are locally. There is privacy. Like, there are many benefits. I won't list all of them, and also there are problems. For example, if you are inside your device, you cannot benefit from the knowledge of all the other devices, right? So you cannot aggregate the data. You only know very well about yourself. You're very private, but you don't know a lot of information that you may find useful. What we'd like is personally to do both, merge 5G and AI, and then at that point, which kind of use cases does it open? We have a few that are very interesting and lined up, but can't disclose them.
Praveen, do you want to give an alternate view?
So I would like to talk about 5G stuff, but I think to go to your point, it's where the sensing aspect is, as on an edge device, you have the sensing. So the decision you're going to make with those parameters is going to be better optimized for that particular scenario. But in the case of, say, mission-critical tasks like autonomous driving, right? If there's some sort of hazard way ahead of you, and the network is able to sense it and pass on the information to you, you're able to respond to it much faster because of 5G. that's going to help that case. So it depends on where the decision is being made based on what parameters. I think 5G is better optimized for certain other things compared to the examples being made.
Great audience participation. Thank you for being. JC.
I have a question. And you mentioned that, like, bad data in, right, and then bad decisions out. And this question's kind of pointed at Tom. You know, how do you deal with the bad data coming into your network or even corrupt data in the financial institutions? All my information's on the dark web, right? And somebody can feed that information into your system. And how do you know that's real, that's accurate? And then you're basing decisions on, my house purchase or whatever on that. How do you deal with that data, corrupt data?
Right.
That's really important.
Yeah, that's really important, and a lot of effort and engineering goes into that. Some people group that with data engineering, but it's just like my organ transplant story, right? Means after you got the whole thing figured out, match and everything, then it's chop, chop, stitch, stitch. So that's actually the algorithm, the chop, chop, stitch, stitch. The whole world is focused on that, but it's that preamble. And you hit upon a very good point, bad data, right? So let's take an example. Let's say, we are trying to detect fraud. You swiped your card, we are trying to detect whether, it's fraudulent or not. Now, know that we just don't have your data, we have everyone's data. So because we have everyone's data, first of all, we can figure out whose spending patterns and lifestyle is close to yours. So that's a group. Now, you're usually in that group and you behave differently from that group. That's a red flag. Now, you could behave differently from that group in two cases. One is it's a fraud, someone else got hold of your card, or we have bad data, right? So both of those are explored, and there is a model which actually figures out, is it really bad data? And there is a model that figures out, is it really fraud? In fact, in our fraud detection models, fraud detection software, we don't have one algorithm, we don't have two algorithms, we don't have three algorithms. We have 16 algorithms and 8 different models. That's how production systems work. It's not one algorithm. And it's cascades of those. And there are some that work in the cloud, which deal with patterns across larger chunks of time. And there are some that go at the point of sale on the computer that actually swipes, that are instantaneous and relevant to that time and space. So the combination of all that is really how production systems work.
I had a question around how, and this might be a little bit more of a technical question, how the algorithms within AI are solving type 1 and type 2 errors. And this can be applied across many different verticals, right, many products. But this goes back to a lot of the topics that were discussed, around making predictions for breast cancer, or making predictions for fraud. So, we look at within AI, when we have the F1 score as one metric, and I know there's a lot of debate around that as well. What are your examples of how to deal with type 1 and type 2 errors within your data sets?
Who wants to take that one?
I'm not a data scientist, don't ask me. I'm the business guy.
I can take it. So first of all, type 1 and type 2 errors are also known as alpha and beta errors. And that means a false positive or false negative. So in the breast cancer, right, type 1 error is, it's actually a breast cancer, but you did not detect it. You thought it wasn't, or your model thought it wasn't. Beta error is right the opposite. It was not actually a breast cancer, and you in fact flagged it as a breast cancer, right? So everyone knows what that is. That's a big challenge. And in fact, in machine learning, we commonly, and this is commonly used by everyone, they say prediction. It's really not prediction, it's actually projection. All these models project, they don't predict. They don't know what's going to happen. They just project. Just like when we're driving a car, we point our steering straight and we hope that the car goes straight. But anything could go wrong, yeah, right? And you need not go straight. So if there are parameters outside, you cannot do anything. All you can control is what data you feed in. So that's where garbage in, garbage out comes in, first of all, to control that. Secondly, in production again, in academics, they go into all kinds of math and everything to solve it, cross-validation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In production, what happens, it's usually a trade-off between those errors and cost, dollars, right? So for example, Netflix has had this competition a few years back. They would give $1 million to anyone who would improve their current algorithm by 10%, improve its alpha error by 10%, right? So it's not suggesting a movie that you hate, because that is far more irritating than 10 movies that it's like, right? So they wanted that, right? And they offered a $1 million prize. Several data scientists from all over the world, universities, the MindWorks2 type people applied to it. The prize was given, but then they chose not to implement it. Why? It was too expensive from an engineering perspective, right? So in the real life, alpha beta error discussion goes, there is a third symbol, dollars. And usually it's a trade-off.
Let's take one more question. I think we have to leave the building at 8 o'clock sharp. For me.
I have a very specific question for Kevin, because I think Pure Metrics has done something that's in a space where you're a bunch of experts already, which is a bunch of MDs who are really good at detecting breast cancer or not. So can you just walk us through how you were able to convince a bunch of experts that you can do their job better and show them that they've been doing a pretty shitty job all along?
Well,
yes, cars on that shirt.
There's a couple things to know. First of all, we don't have to convince them that they're not doing a good job. They actually self-report on all their statistics, and they know exactly how good of a job they're doing. Second, because doctors are my primary customer, I don't try and tell them they're doing a crappy job. In fact, we called our product CM Assist, because we want the doctors to know it's there to help. And Naveed said something, and we go by this as well. We tell doctors that there's artificial intelligence, and when you combine it with the real intelligence of the doctors, that's when you get the better outcomes for the patient. So we've taken that approach. But I think if you think about this in the broader context, and I tell this to doctors as well, because it's interesting because we talk to doctors who are younger, fresh out of med school, middle-aged, and then older. We get very different perspectives on adoption of AI. And what we tell them is, because they ask us, well, what should we do and how do we think about this? I always say it's two things. You want to embrace and enable. Embrace AI because it's not going away, and figure out ways that you can enable it. And they say, well, that's going to eliminate my position. And I use this analogy with doctors, and it helps kind of reset them. I say, well, 50 years ago when a woman thought she was pregnant, she went to the doctor for a whole battery of tests. Now when she thinks she's pregnant, she goes to the bathroom and pees on a stick. But they're still OBGYNs. So, the role for the doctor is not going to go away. It may shift. It may shift to higher value activities. It may shift to different value activities. And the doctors who embrace that and find a way to enable it within their practices are the ones that will thrive. And so that's what we tell them.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thanks to everyone for coming. Special thanks to the 5 panelists who gave up a big chunk of your evening. And I hope you guys enjoyed yourselves. You learned something, maybe some new ideas were sparked, a few partnerships, new businesses.